She was beaten and left to die. Until a lone cowboy found her and swore she'd never be hurt again, he rode slowly across the dry land as the sun began to fall behind the hills. The sky was painted with soft orange and purple colors, and the air felt quiet and calm. The cowboy had spent the whole day working on fences and checking cattle, and now he just wanted to reach home before dark. His horse moved steadily, knowing the path well. This road was empty most days, and he liked it that way. Silence had become his comfort. He was known in the nearby town as a man who spoke little but helped when needed. Some people thought he was distant, others thought he was simply private. The truth was that he had learned long ago that words were not always necessary. Life had taught him patience and observation. He noticed small details others missed: changes in the wind, sounds carried across open land, or the uneasy shift in a horse's movement. As he rode along an old abandoned road, his horse suddenly slowed and lifted its head. The cowboy noticed the change immediately. He gently pulled the reins and looked ahead. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just dust and scattered rocks. Then he noticed a shape lying near the edge of the path. It looked like old cloth or maybe someone's lost belongings. He guided the horse closer, his eyes sharp but calm. When he reached the shape, he felt a heavy silence settle around him. A young woman lay there, still and pale, barely moving. Her clothes were dusty, and she looked exhausted, as if she had been walking for a long time before collapsing. The cowboy quickly dismounted, kneeling beside her carefully so he would not startle her if she woke. He checked her breathing first. It was weak but steady. Relief passed through him quietly. He spoke in a low, calm voice even though she seemed unconscious, telling her she was not alone. Years of working with animals and people had taught him that tone mattered more than words. For a moment he considered riding into town for help, but something told him she might not want attention or crowds. There was fear written in her face even while she slept. He decided the safest place for now was his ranch, where she could rest without questions or pressure. He removed his coat and wrapped it around her gently, making sure she felt warm. Lifting her carefully onto the horse took effort, but he moved slowly so she would not feel sudden pain. He climbed up behind her and guided the horse toward home, riding slower than usual to keep her steady. During the ride, she stirred slightly. Her eyes opened for a brief moment, filled with confusion and fear. She tried to pull away weakly, her body tense despite exhaustion. The cowboy spoke softly, promising she was safe and that he meant no harm. His voice was calm, steady, and honest. She watched him for a moment, unsure, then her eyes closed again as tiredness took over. The ranch appeared ahead as the last light faded from the sky. It was a simple place, a small wooden house, a barn, and wide open land stretching in every direction. He led the horse slowly to the porch and carefully helped her down. Carrying her inside, he placed her in the guest room, a space rarely used but always clean and ready. He lit a lamp and set a glass of water nearby. He moved quietly, making sure nothing felt threatening or sudden. After covering her with a blanket, he stepped back, giving her space. He knew that waking in an unfamiliar place could be frightening, so he left the door slightly open and walked outside. The night air felt cool as he sat on the porch. He watched the stars appear one by one. His thoughts stayed calm, but he felt a quiet sense of responsibility settle in his chest. Whoever she was, whatever she had been through, she had crossed his path for a reason. He did not believe in coincidence as much as he believed in choice, and he had chosen to help. Inside the house, she woke slowly hours later. At first, she did not move. Her eyes moved across the room, studying every detail. The simple furniture, the soft light from the lamp, the quiet sound of wind outside, none of it felt dangerous, yet her body remained tense. She sat up carefully, feeling sore but stronger than before. For a moment, panic rose as she realized she was in a stranger's home. Memories flickered through her mind, bringing fear and doubt. She stood slowly, walking toward the door with hesitation. When she reached the doorway, she saw the cowboy sitting outside, facing away from her, giving her privacy without even knowing she was awake. He seemed calm, almost peaceful as he watched the dark horizon. Something about his stillness made her pause. The wooden floor creaked softly under her step, and he turned immediately, alert but gentle. He did not move closer. Instead, he stayed where he was and spoke quietly, asking if she needed water or food. His distance felt respectful rather than cold. She did not answer right away. Her eyes searched his face, looking for signs of danger or deception. She had learned not to trust easily. He seemed to understand this without needing explanation. After a moment, he stood slowly and placed a plate of food on a small table near the door, then stepped back again, giving her space. Hunger finally overcame hesitation, and she sat down, eating slowly while watching him carefully. He did not stare or ask questions. He simply waited, allowing silence to exist without pressure. This simple act began to build the smallest thread of trust between them. Days at the ranch followed a gentle rhythm. He worked outside, leaving her alone when she needed rest. She noticed how he avoided sudden movements or loud sounds. Everything about him suggested patience. Even his horse approached her slowly, as if trained to sense her unease. One morning, she stepped outside for the first time. The open land stretched endlessly, filled with fresh air and sunlight. She felt both free and exposed at the same time. The cowboy noticed but said nothing, continuing his work while allowing her to explore at her own pace. She began to see small details about him: how he repaired broken tools carefully instead of throwing them away, how he fed animals before eating himself, how he spoke gently even when no one was listening. These quiet actions slowly changed how she saw him. That evening, as the sun rose again after a long night, she sat near the porch while he prepared coffee. The silence between them felt less heavy than before. She did not share her story yet, and he did not ask. Trust was growing slowly, built on respect rather than curiosity. As the first light of sunrise touched the land, he sat quietly, watching the horizon while she stood in the doorway. For the first time since he found her, she felt a small sense of safety settle inside her heart. It was fragile and new, but real. He did not know her past, and she did not know his, but both sensed that something important had begun the moment their paths crossed on that lonely road. The world outside might still hold uncertainty, but within the quiet space of the ranch, a new chapter was slowly starting, built not on rescue alone, but on patience, kindness, and the possibility of healing. Morning light spread slowly across the ranch, turning the land golden as the sun rose above the hills. The cowboy had already begun his work before the day fully started. He moved quietly, feeding the animals and checking the fences while the air remained cool and calm. Inside the house, the woman woke to the soft sound of wind brushing against the walls. For a moment she forgot where she was, then memory returned gently, bringing both relief and uncertainty. She sat up slowly, noticing that her body felt stronger than before. The deep exhaustion that once held her down had begun to fade, replaced by cautious awareness. The room felt safe, simple, and peaceful. Nothing around her suggested danger. Still, she stayed alert, watching every detail as if ready to leave at any moment. When she stepped into the kitchen, she found a plate of food waiting on the table and a note written in careful handwriting. It simply said that breakfast was ready whenever she wanted it. There were no questions, no pressure, just a quiet offering. She hesitated before sitting down, her eyes scanning the room. The silence felt different now, not empty, but calm. Outside, she could see the cowboy working near the barn. He did not look toward the house immediately, giving her time to move freely without feeling watched. She ate slowly, tasting the food with a strange mix of gratitude and disbelief. Kindness without expectation was something she had not experienced in a long time. After finishing, she walked toward the porch, unsure whether she should speak. He noticed her presence but did not stop working right away. Instead, he finished tying a rope before walking closer, keeping a respectful distance. He greeted her simply, asking if she slept well. His tone remained steady and warm, never demanding more than she was ready to give. She nodded slightly, still unsure how much to say. Silence stretched between them, but it felt less uncomfortable than before. He offered to show her around the ranch if she wanted, making it clear she could say no. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. They walked slowly across the land. He explained small things about the ranch, where the water came from, how the animals were cared for, how the land changed with the seasons. His words were simple, never overwhelming. She listened quietly, occasionally glancing at him, trying to understand what kind of person he was. As they passed by a small garden, she stopped to look at the growing plants. He mentioned that he had started growing vegetables years ago as a way to keep busy during quiet months. Something about this detail made her smile faintly. It showed patience and dedication, qualities she began to recognize in everything he did. Later that day, she sat outside while he repaired a fence nearby. Watching him work gave her a strange sense of calm. There was no rush in his movements, only steady focus. She realized that he did not treat her like someone fragile or broken. Instead, he treated her like a person who simply needed time. In the afternoon, a truck passed by on the distant road. The sound made her tense immediately. She froze, her breath becoming shallow. The cowboy noticed her reaction and paused his work, but he did not move closer. Instead, he spoke gently from where he stood, reminding her that she was safe. The truck continued past without stopping, and slowly her body relaxed again. That moment revealed how deeply fear still lived inside her. She felt embarrassed by her reaction, but he never judged her. His calm acceptance allowed her to regain control without feeling weak. As days turned into a routine, small changes began to appear. She started helping with simple tasks like feeding chickens or carrying tools. At first, she asked for permission before touching anything, but he encouraged her quietly, telling her she was welcome to help whenever she wanted. The work gave her a sense of purpose, something that helped her feel more grounded. One evening, while walking near the barn, she noticed a small, injured animal lying near the fence. She froze, unsure what to do. The cowboy approached carefully, kneeling beside the animal with gentle hands. He spoke softly to it while checking its condition, showing patience and care. She watched closely, seeing the same kindness he had shown her. The moment touched her deeply because it proved his nature was genuine. After helping the animal, he explained how healing takes time and steady attention. His words felt meaningful beyond the situation, as if he understood more than he said. She nodded, feeling a quiet connection growing between them. Later that night, she sat on the porch while he made coffee. The stars filled the sky, bright and endless. For the first time, she spoke more than a few words. She mentioned that she had traveled far and had been alone for a long time. He listened without interrupting, allowing her to choose how much to share. She did not tell him everything, only small pieces of her past. She described feeling lost and unsure of where she belonged. He responded simply, saying that sometimes people need a place to rest before finding their path again. His words carried no pressure, only understanding. Trust continued to grow slowly. She began to explore the ranch on her own, walking along trails and learning the rhythm of the land. The wide open space gave her room to breathe and think. Each morning felt a little brighter than the last. The town nearby eventually became aware that the cowboy had someone staying with him. A neighbor stopped by briefly, offering supplies and curious glances. The cowboy handled the situation calmly, introducing her only if she wished and never speaking on her behalf. This respect made her feel stronger, as if her choices mattered again. Inside herself, she still struggled with memories that brought doubt. Some nights she woke from uneasy dreams, unsure whether the safety she felt was real or temporary. During those moments, she would sit by the window and watch the moonlight over the land, reminding herself that she was no longer alone. One morning, she found a small radio repaired and placed on the table. Soft music filled the room, bringing warmth she had not felt in years. She realized he had fixed it for her without being asked. This simple gesture meant more than words could express. Gradually, laughter returned to her life in small moments, a horse nudging her hand, a sudden gust of wind lifting her hat, or a shared smile during dinner. These moments felt fragile but precious, showing that healing was possible. As the sun set on another day, she stepped outside alone, feeling the warmth of sunlight fade into evening air. The cowboy watched from a distance, noticing the way she stood taller now, less burdened by fear. He did not mention the change, but he felt proud of her strength. The part ends with her standing at the edge of the ranch, looking across the wide horizon. For the first time since he found her, she felt a sense of choice rather than survival. She was no longer just someone hiding from the past. She was someone slowly rediscovering who she could become, supported by quiet kindness and a place that allowed her to heal at her own pace. The days began to move with a gentle rhythm that felt almost natural to her. Morning sunlight would enter through the kitchen window, and the smell of fresh coffee would fill the air. She no longer woke with the same fear that once followed her every moment. Instead, she felt curiosity about the day ahead. The ranch had slowly become more than just a place to recover. It had become a space where she could breathe without looking over her shoulder. The cowboy noticed the changes quietly. He saw how she walked with more confidence, how her shoulders were no longer tense all the time, and how she sometimes hummed softly while doing small tasks. He never pointed these things out directly, but he appreciated them. He believed that healing should never feel like a performance. It should grow naturally, like grass after rain. One morning, he asked if she wanted to ride with him to check the far fence line. At first, she hesitated. Riding out into open land felt different from staying near the house where she felt safe. But something inside her wanted to try. She nodded slowly, and he brought out a calm, gentle horse that matched her quiet energy. The first part of the ride was silent. The sound of hooves against the ground created a steady rhythm that helped her relax. The open sky stretched endlessly above them, and the wide land felt both freeing and overwhelming. She focused on her breathing and the movement of the horse beneath her, reminding herself that she was in control. As they rode further from the ranch, she noticed how peaceful everything looked. The hills rolled softly into the distance, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass. For a moment, she forgot about fear and simply enjoyed the feeling of moving forward. The cowboy glanced at her occasionally, making sure she felt comfortable, but he allowed her space to experience the moment in her own way. They stopped near a small stream to let the horses drink. She dismounted carefully and walked toward the water, watching the reflection of the sky. Something about the quiet scene made her feel grounded. She realized that she had not allowed herself to feel calm in a long time. Standing there, she felt a new kind of strength, one that came from within rather than from hiding. On the ride back, she spoke more than usual. She asked questions about the land, about how long he had lived there, and about the seasons. He answered simply, sharing pieces of his life without going too deep into the past. Their conversation felt easy without pressure. Back at the ranch, she began taking more initiative. She cleaned tools without being asked and learned how to feed the animals on her own. Each new task gave her confidence. She was no longer just a guest recovering from hardship. She was becoming part of the daily rhythm. One afternoon, while organizing supplies in the barn, she laughed when a curious goat tried to follow her around. The sound surprised both of them. It was the first full laugh he had heard from her, and it carried warmth that filled the space. She covered her mouth in embarrassment, but he simply smiled, recognizing how important that moment was. Despite these peaceful days, a quiet tension began to build beneath the surface. The world outside the ranch still existed, and she knew she could not avoid it forever. Sometimes she would stop working and stare toward the distant road, her expression thoughtful and uncertain. The change became clearer when they rode into town together to pick up supplies. She felt nervous before leaving, unsure how it would feel to return to a public place. The cowboy reassured her gently, reminding her that they could leave any time she wanted. Town was busy compared to the quiet ranch. People moved through the streets, talking and laughing. She felt eyes on her even when no one was actually staring. Old fears returned briefly, tightening her chest, but she stayed close to him, finding comfort in his steady presence. While he loaded supplies into the truck, she waited near a small store. That was when she noticed someone watching her from across the street. The person's gaze felt familiar, though distant enough that she could not be certain. A wave of unease passed through her, and she turned away quickly. When she mentioned it to the cowboy, he listened carefully without reacting with alarm. He simply suggested they head back soon. His calm response helped her feel supported rather than overwhelmed. Still, the moment stayed in her mind during the drive home. That evening, she sat alone outside, thinking deeply. She realized that running from fear forever was not the same as healing. The ranch had given her safety, but it had also given her strength. She began to wonder if she could face whatever waited beyond her past. The cowboy joined her later, bringing 2 cups of warm tea. They sat quietly under the stars. After a long silence, she spoke about feeling tired of hiding. She did not share full details, but her voice carried determination. He listened and told her that courage does not mean having no fear. It means choosing to move forward even when fear exists. His words stayed with her through the night. She thought about how far she had come since the day he found her. Back then, she could barely stand or trust anyone. Now she was making decisions again, shaping her own path. The next morning, she woke with a clear sense of purpose. She approached him while he worked near the fence and told him she wanted to go into town again soon, not to run errands, but to face whatever made her uneasy. He nodded slowly, respecting her decision. Over the following days, they prepared quietly. She practiced riding more confidently, learning to control her pace and direction. He offered guidance when needed, but allowed her to make mistakes and learn from them. Each success made her smile a little more. Their bond grew stronger through shared effort rather than dramatic moments. They worked side by side, fixing fences, feeding animals, and sharing simple meals. Sometimes they talked about small things like weather or favorite foods, and other times they sat in comfortable silence. One evening, while watching the sunset together, she realized that she no longer saw herself as someone broken. She felt capable, even hopeful. The ranch had not erased her past, but it had given her a new perspective. The tension of the earlier moment in town remained, but instead of fear, it now sparked determination. She understood that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant learning to stand strong despite memories. As Part 3 closes, she prepares mentally to step beyond the safety of the ranch and face the world again. Standing beside the cowboy, she looks toward the distant road not with fear but with resolve. The journey ahead may still hold challenges, but she now believes she has the strength to meet them, supported by trust, patience, and the quiet bond that has grown between them. The morning felt different from the others. The air was cool and the sky was clear, but inside her there was a quiet storm of thoughts. She woke earlier than usual, sitting by the window while sunlight slowly filled the room. Today was the day she had chosen to return to town not just for supplies, but to face whatever had been waiting for her there. The decision had not come easily. She had spent many nights thinking about it, weighing fear against the growing strength she felt inside. Outside, the cowboy was already preparing the horses. He worked calmly, moving with the same steady rhythm that had always comforted her. When she stepped onto the porch, he looked up and gave a small nod, silently acknowledging her decision without asking if she was sure. That quiet support meant more to her than long speeches ever could. The ride toward town felt longer than before. She noticed every sound, the wind passing through dry grass, the distant cry of birds, the steady breathing of the horse beneath her. Each step forward felt symbolic, as if she were leaving behind an old version of herself with every mile. As they approached the town, familiar buildings came into view. The streets were alive with movement. People walked between shops, children laughed, and the sound of conversation filled the air. For a moment, doubt returned. Her hands tightened slightly on the reins, but she kept moving. The cowboy stayed beside her but allowed her to lead the way. He understood that this was her moment, not his. His presence was steady, like a quiet anchor, but he never overshadowed her choices. They stopped near the general store. She dismounted slowly, taking a deep breath before stepping forward. The ground felt solid beneath her feet, reminding her that she was no longer running. She walked through the street with her head held higher than before, even though her heart beat quickly. As she entered the store, the sound of the doorbell echoed softly. The shopkeeper greeted them politely, and everything felt normal at first. She began selecting small items, focusing on simple tasks to keep herself calm. Then she felt it again, the sensation of being watched. She turned slowly and saw someone standing near the entrance. The person looked familiar, connected to memories she had tried to leave behind. For a brief moment, fear returned like a shadow. Her breath caught and the room felt smaller. The cowboy noticed the change in her expression immediately, but he did not step in front of her or take control of the situation. Instead, he stayed slightly behind, offering support without taking away her voice. The person approached slowly, speaking in a tone that carried a mix of surprise and expectation. Old emotions stirred inside her, doubt, anger, and sadness, but she remained still. She remembered the long days at the ranch, the quiet strength she had rebuilt, and the promise she made to herself to stop living in fear. Instead of backing away, she stood her ground. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke. She did not allow the conversation to become heated. She simply set clear boundaries, expressing that her life had changed and that she would not return to old patterns. The words came slowly at first but grew stronger with each sentence. The people around them continued with their own lives, unaware of the deep meaning behind the moment. To others, it might have looked like a simple conversation, but for her it was a turning point. She was no longer the person who felt powerless. She was choosing her path openly. The other person seemed surprised by her confidence. After a brief exchange, they stepped back, realizing that she was no longer someone they could influence. The tension faded slowly, leaving behind a sense of relief that felt almost unreal. When the conversation ended, she turned toward the cowboy. He did not ask questions. He simply nodded slightly, acknowledging her strength. That small gesture filled her with pride. She realized that she had not needed him to speak for her. His role had been to believe in her ability to stand on her own. They finished their errands quietly and left town soon after. The ride back felt lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The wind brushed against her face, and for the first time in a long while she felt completely present in the moment. As they reached the ranch, she dismounted and stood looking across the open land. Everything felt familiar yet new. She had returned to town not as someone hiding, but as someone reclaiming her voice. That evening, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed with warm colors, reflecting the calm she now felt inside. She spoke more freely than before, sharing how afraid she had been and how proud she felt for facing that fear. He listened quietly, offering a few thoughtful words but mostly allowing her to own the experience. Over the next few days, she noticed a shift in herself. She moved with greater confidence, making decisions without hesitation. She began planning small goals for the future, learning new skills, exploring opportunities beyond the ranch. The idea of independence no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt exciting. Their relationship also changed subtly. There was a deeper level of trust between them, built not on rescue but on partnership. They worked side by side as equals, sharing responsibilities and laughter. Sometimes they would ride together without speaking, comfortable in silence. One afternoon, she suggested taking a ride alone. It was a simple request, but it represented a huge step for her. He agreed immediately, handing her the reins with a quiet smile. As she rode across the open land by herself, she felt freedom in a way she had never experienced before. When she returned, her face carried a glow of confidence. She realized that the ranch had not become a place where she hid from the world. It had become a place where she rebuilt herself. As part 4 comes to an end, she stands beside him watching the stars appear one by one. The challenges of her past no longer control her choices. She has faced fear and discovered her own strength. The journey is not finished, but she now walks forward with courage, supported by respect, trust, and the quiet bond that continues to grow between them. The days after her return from town felt calmer, yet filled with quiet change. Something inside her had shifted deeply. The fear that once followed her like a shadow had faded into the background, replaced by a growing sense of control over her own life. Each morning she woke with purpose instead of uncertainty, and the ranch no longer felt like a place she was hiding in. It felt like a place where she had learned how to stand again. Sunrise came gently across the land, turning the sky soft gold. She stepped outside, breathing in the fresh air. The cowboy was already near the barn, repairing a fence. He looked up when he saw her, offering a simple nod and a small smile. Their connection had grown stronger without needing many words. They understood each other through actions and shared moments. She began helping more with the daily work, not because she felt obligated, but because she wanted to contribute. She carried feed, brushed the horses, and learned how to fix small tools. Each new skill made her feel more confident. The cowboy guided her patiently, explaining things clearly but never making her feel inexperienced. He trusted her to learn at her own pace. One afternoon, she paused while working and looked across the wide fields. The land felt endless, full of possibility. For the first time, she allowed herself to think seriously about the future. Before coming here, her thoughts had only been about survival, about getting through the next moment. Now she began to imagine a life shaped by her own choices. Later that evening, as they sat together near the porch, she spoke about those thoughts. She admitted that she was thinking about what came next. Her voice carried both excitement and uncertainty. The cowboy listened carefully, his expression calm but thoughtful. He told her that finding a new path was important, and that whatever she chose should come from her own heart. She expected him to ask her to stay, but he did not. Instead, he encouraged her to explore possibilities, even if they took her away from the ranch. That honesty surprised her. She realized that his kindness had never been about keeping her close. It had always been about helping her become strong enough to stand on her own. Over the following days, she considered different options. She thought about finding work in town, about meeting new people, about creating a life that belonged entirely to her. The idea felt both thrilling and frightening. She walked long distances across the ranch, thinking deeply about who she wanted to become. Meanwhile, the cowboy continued his routines, but she sensed a quiet change in him too. He seemed more thoughtful, occasionally watching her with a soft expression that carried both pride and sadness. He never spoke about it directly, but she understood that her choices would affect him as well. One morning, she decided to visit town alone. Preparing for the trip filled her with nervous energy, but also excitement. The cowboy helped saddle the horse, giving simple advice before stepping back. He trusted her completely, and that trust gave her courage. The ride into town felt different this time. She noticed details she had missed before, the colors of buildings, the friendly greetings from people passing by, the rhythm of daily life. She visited a small shop and spoke confidently with the owner about possible work opportunities. The conversation went well, leaving her feeling hopeful. As she walked through the streets, she realized that she no longer felt like a stranger in the world. She belonged wherever she chose to stand. That realization brought a quiet smile to her face. When she returned to the ranch that evening, she shared her experience with him. He listened carefully, clearly proud of her progress. They talked late into the night about dreams and possibilities. Their conversation felt honest and open, free from expectations or pressure. Days passed, and her decision slowly became clear. She wanted to stay near the ranch but also build something of her own. She imagined working in town while still returning to the peaceful land that had helped her heal. The balance felt right to her. When she told him her decision, he smiled gently. Relief and happiness crossed his face. He admitted that he would have supported any choice she made, but he was glad she would remain nearby. Their bond had grown into something strong and steady, based on mutual respect rather than dependency. Life continued to move forward. She began working part-time in town, meeting new people and learning new skills. Each day brought small challenges and small victories. In the evenings, she returned to the ranch, sharing stories of her experiences while helping with chores. The routine felt fulfilling, blending independence with connection. One evening, as they rode together across the open fields, she reflected on how much had changed. She remembered the day he found her on the lonely road, unsure if she would survive or trust again. Now she felt strong, capable, and hopeful. She turned to him and thanked him sincerely, explaining that he had not just saved her life but helped her believe in herself again. He responded simply, saying that she had done the hardest work herself. His humility made her smile. She understood that true support does not take credit, it simply stands beside you while you grow. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with warm colors, they slowed their horses and watched the horizon together. The moment felt peaceful, full of quiet understanding. Neither of them rushed to define what their future would look like. They allowed it to unfold naturally, trusting the bond they had built. Seasons began to change, bringing new experiences and deeper friendship. She felt stronger with every passing day, and the ranch remained a place of calm and renewal. She planted flowers near the porch, adding her own touch to the land. The cowboy noticed and appreciated how the space now reflected both of them. The story closes with a gentle scene at sunrise. They ride side by side across the open land, the air cool and full of promise. She no longer rides as someone lost or afraid. She rides as someone who has faced darkness and found light again. The cowboy watches her with quiet respect, knowing that her strength comes from within. Together, they move forward into a future built on trust, patience, and hope. The past no longer defines her. Instead, it has shaped her into someone stronger, someone ready to live fully and freely. The wide horizon ahead symbolizes endless possibility, reminding them both that healing is not an ending but a beginning.